started with the committee workshop section, and we're going to start with discussion on the comprehensive review for committee assignment. So I don't know if you have a paper copy or you have it on your electronic device, but I believe we're discussing the initial audit from the comprehensive plan and zoning ordinance update. I think it was dated April 9th.
Yes.
Yeah. And this was EPD's initial audit of the borough's current comprehensive plan, which was dated April 2007, and the zoning ordinance, which was amended in 2014. And the action plan was reviewed and analyzed to determine which actions remain relevant for the borough moving forward. So, in terms of my understanding, the items that are here for us to review are numbers 1 through 46 to start, and the 2 columns are addressed. The issue was, the item was addressed ongoing or in progress, and then the other column is focus area for the future, and I believe EPD identified from our previous conversations with them on which items they would like us to focus on for the future, or what they believed we wanted to focus on for the future from those discussions. So, does anybody have anything to add to that in terms of the overview of what we're doing tonight? And I know that there was discussion on breaking it down into committee assignments, and if there's something that you believe that we should send to committee, I think that's important for discussion. I would say that the zoning aspect of the review should probably go to the planning commission, because that we would need their recommendation on that. And there seems to be a few major, actually, they're kind of minor tweaks.
They are, but there's other ones that there's discrepancies that I found being the zoning officer.
Okay.
And going through, so there's going to be some other changes beyond that.
Okay.
And I think that
let's save that discussion for part B tonight,
yes.
And then
okay.
we'll talk about this first, the comprehensive plan, this list of items. So I think we should just start by going down through and taking it piece by piece and seeing if anybody has any comments. Let's start on page 1. And does anybody have on page 1, does anybody have any comments on the items listed on that page? I believe those are items that were already addressed in the past comprehensive plan, and they're not recommending any changes to that.
No, those are the first 7 there seem to be in progress or ongoing, and there's certain other things that are in place already to address those.
Right. And then continue on to page 2, 8 through 15. Here there are a number of green highlighted sections. So do we have any comments on the green highlighted sections? I had one comment on number 9, promote realignment of intersections and thoroughfares to promote efficiency and safety of future neighborhood development as a former house track. There's no check marks in these boxes, and I thought that was done as part of the land development plan.
It was. There's certain things on the report card in the comprehensive plan that we didn't check. This was something that Carolyn and I spoke about, and I sent her actually a copy of the overall plan for Legacy Park. And she did not check these in here, so, and that's the same way number 12, she kept it in there, but number 12 can actually go away since corridor 1 is just a pipe dream anymore. So there was a couple on here that I thought maybe the committees may want to look at, and I've just, if I can make those suggestions, I'd throw them out for people to look at. Number 9 would be the Public Works and Safety Committee. I think we can maybe expand that a little more into some of the other, intersections, not necessarily just at the Hess Farm, as far as promoting the walkability and a few other things like that. One of the things that we spoke about was Simpson Street and the walkability trying to cross Simpson Street. And I witnessed it today. I actually pulled out from the church to try to block for people crossing the crosswalk because nobody was stopping for them. And they did get across the street eventually, but there's little issues like that. Simpson is notorious for not being able to cross, and I know, Sarah, you know that, and I know Kyle comes down through there too, so, walking.
Did you say number 8 is?
Number 9.
Number 9.
Yeah, I think we can tie in some of our existing intersections, not just the Hess Farm, into that for safety of future neighborhood developments. Number 13, I think, even though there's 2 check marks in there, I think there's some room for improvement in there. And I do have the Public Works and Safety in there, and the Community Outreach and Development Committee may be looking at that one, for some downtown parking signage, making it known a little more what direction they would like to go.
Well, in terms of, what would be the goal of the committee? What would be the outcome that you were looking for from the committee in terms of the recommendation for the comprehensive plan? And not just the goal that it would implement feasible traffic calming. Like, are you asking the committee to consider what feasible traffic calming techniques should be used?
Yeah, I think, and that's where the engineer is going to have to chime in also, and the engineer is going to have to contribute to that. But I think what you would like to see, what that committee would like to see, to bring back to council and say, this is our idea, this is what we'd like to see happen, and then get council's endorsement on it, so that we can get it in the comprehensive plan and create that vision going forward. I think to me, that would be the most efficient way to do it. I don't know if that's your feelings too.
I mean, I think that's a good exercise. I'm not sure that was the goal. My question would be, was that the goal of EPD in putting this in front of us to say, what are the specific things we're going to do with these items versus, are these items still our goals? In other words,
right,
we're having the discussion that these are our goals, that this is our plan and our vision. The details of it come later.
Get fleshed out later, right.
Yeah. That was sort of my opinion of it.
Right.
I was curious what your discussion with EPD. I was curious what you think they're looking for.
I think they want to see part of what you said. Is this still something that we want to look at? Is this, and Carolyn and I had that discussion, and I think we both agreed there is room for improvement on that. There's room for signage. There's room for ways of delineating what the parking is, and making people more aware of what's out there. One of the things that they have was I think it was in the meeting where she shared her screen and she showed some of the GIS stuff. Since we already have, the authority has the GIS already established, and we can start using that as a base plate to start putting other things on, and then people can go down through the layers. I think as we spoke through that, she was like, what would be some of those ideas? And I said, the vision part of that is going to have to be probably coming from council to decide what they want to look at. I think DMP can be pulled into that. I'm sure we can get Rebecca involved in some of that too. It's not just but as far as leading the cause, so to speak, and gathering that information, I think maybe that the Public Works and Safety Committee would be one to gather that stuff, develop a plan, and come back to council for final approval on it.
If I may, Mr. Miller, the comprehensive planning process is a process, and I was not privy to any conversations with EPT, but typically at this stage, the consultant is going to be looking to council, in this case, to try to identify council's priorities with respect to the vision for the community. And so if there are specific issues that you want to tackle, if you know there are challenges the community has been facing, correct me if I'm wrong, Roger, but I think what they're looking for is making sure that we can prioritize what council's goals are, and whatever those goals are, that's going to then set the stage for drilling down deeper into getting to a more detailed, comprehensive plan that's going to focus on those goals. Is that correct, Roger?
Yeah, for lack of better terms, yes, that's what I was trying to articulate. Thank you.
And that's what the purpose of tonight is, to make sure that there's a consensus among council in terms of what those goals are. So if you agree with these recommendations or they need to be added or subtracted, now's the time to do that.
Right. And not necessarily to have a detailed conversation on how to implement each one.
Okay.
Because I'm sure that the consultant will have recommendations for us on how to do that.
And they're going to be open for any more information also as we go through this process. There'll be, once we start drilling down to the data that they're collecting as far as demographics and a few other things, they're going to be able to see, plus their experience is going to tell us what will work and what won't work.
Right. So among these that are on this page, page 2, are there any that you want to see taken off of this list that are either highlighted or not highlighted? I think we could probably eliminate number 12, being that corridor 1 is no longer being discussed. Does anybody agree with that or disagree?
I guess I'm assuming if there are no check marks, we're just simply agreeing with what's identified here, right? So if there are no check marks next to number 12, we have effectively eliminated it from our priority list.
Another question would be, maybe perhaps we could reword number 14, construct stormwater management improvements to minimize, because that seems to be more of an authority purview now. Maybe the council work with the authority to.
Yeah, and Carolyn is aware, EPD is aware that there's, the authority's back in operation now, and there will probably be a small section in the comprehensive plan discussing, their role and what they're looking at doing and a few things like that. So, and I do have this one marked that this would be an authority task to look at.
Okay.
And number 15 is an extremely cost-prohibitive venture to try to undertake, not only on our part, but it'd be on the residents' part too, to rewire basically their buildings to try to get the wires to come in underground. Places like the G-Man, who is pretty much landlocked, they have no other way to get power in there without securing an easement from one of the surrounding properties.
Right.
Why do you think they made it a priority for us?
The group that was in the planning commission prior to the one we have now, there was a lot of urban planners, a lot of engineers. One of the things that they wanted to do was to clean up some of the things. Most of the stuff is in alleys now. There are some overhead wires on Main Street. That's pretty obvious in certain places. But a lot of the main infrastructure runs down the alley. So, but they wanted to clean things up. They wanted to try to get that. It is a very, very cost prohibitive undertaking to try to do that.
And do we have power issues? Like, I know other places have power issues, and that's why they moved to underground, but do we lose power in the borough often?
There's a few places that depend, let me rephrase it, depends on what it is. A bad lightning storm could end up shutting down most of the borough at one time. Traffic accidents where they hit a pole or something, especially one coming into town, it usually causes sections. Out around Darla Road, Allison Avenue, there's what they term as dirty electricity. It's not, I'm using a term that I hear being bandied about. It's infrequent, it goes up and down, it's not a steady stream of voltage coming in, amps and stuff like that. PP&L has a few things in place to try to clean that up, but it does cause the residents some problems. But out there, most of that stuff is underground, around the Allison Avenue, Darla Road, Sharon, those places are newer parts of the development, or parts of the borough that have underground utilities.
So it's more of a cosmetic reason. Okay.
Yeah, this is more cosmetic.
So I would be inclined to move it off of our priority list.
I'd be.
Not do away with it entirely, but maybe move it into another phase.
And is that something that typically happens when they're doing other work underground, that you can do electricity at the same time, or like a far-off plan? I don't know how that all works.
You can. There's a process you have to go through with like PP&L to get them to move underground.
So if the ground was opened up for another reason, we could.
If it's in the right spot. There's, coming from that background, the engineering background, there's a certain hierarchy of the way they have to put stuff in the ground. You know, sewer's bottom, water's usually next, then electric and stuff like that. So you never try to put electricity underneath sewer. There are certain places in town where that's not gonna be possible. You're gonna have the electricity right with the sewer lines and stuff like that. So it's gonna be, that's a problem. You gotta have certain separations. PUC regulations come into play. The engineering on it is almost as expensive as what the actual cost of doing it.
Yeah, and I agree. We have lots of other things that need to be done.
We can make that a lower priority.
Well, yeah, and that's one of the things, I don't know if I like how this list is organized, that, you know, it does show us that we have ongoing, you know, address ongoing and in progress, but in terms, it doesn't really tell us what our top priority is. Like, we don't have a.
It seems like it's based like.
Must have.
This is the report card out of the old comprehensive plan. This is the report card, so it tells them where we were going, what we were doing, you know, and like you said, number 9, you know, there's some things there that we didn't do the check marks in there that should have been put in there. So there are certain things that we could address. There's other things that we're relying on other people to address, and trying to encourage them to go with that. Kind of like we're doing with the schools on the stormwater stuff. You know, we're when it comes through with Greg and I, we're trying to encourage them.
So maybe we should identify, would it be helpful then for us to identify, as we go through these, which ones are high priority?
And part of that is when we bring in the stakeholders.
So our number 14 would be high priority, because that will ultimately impact how we, you know, road paving and go into that.
Yeah, but it's definitely not my priority, because there's the capital improvements is 43, and I think that's something that's a lot more pressing than 43.
And like 15, I mean, for opportunities for moving utility lines, I think it's a lofty goal. It would obviously be expensive, but if perchance there was some sort of funding that was available from some entity, or there was some revitalization project that was going to take up the entire, you know, an entire section, then it wouldn't hurt us to have that as to say, well, you know, part of our grant application for whatever money is available, that it's in our comprehensive plan.
Well, and if PP&L comes through and they want to do the smart grid and they want to redo all of that stuff, you know, they may want to look at something like that. And I mean, that's where their utilities are in the right of ways. You know, and then I think that's where council's got to look at what kind of impact that's going to have on the residents, the traffic, and stuff like that, and justify it.
It doesn't really hurt us to have it in.
Right.
It doesn't, it takes away resources from other more important things. So
But
I agree, we should have a list of things that we want to identify right away, and then a secondary list. We can remove the stuff that's already done, so we don't have to think about it anymore, right? You should really have a third column on here.
Well, and I think most of the green have been either addressed in one form or another, at least to what the intent of was the original document. And I think that's what this is for, to see where our priorities lie now. Because, I mean, all of council's new. most of the entire planning commission is new. The HARB has new members on it, so there's different opinions there, and it's more current. We're more current than what they were 10, 15 years ago when this was originally written. So there is some room to add things to this too, also, if something comes up that's not on this list.
Also part of the stakeholders and.
Exactly.
I think the green was just the company's input, like what they think is important for future planning.
Yeah, so, I think we can continue on.
So I'd like to add 16 to the green list.
I think that.
As a higher priority.
Yeah. I mean, we're gonna be looking at Harvard Avenue, and we know that the partnership is looking at Heritage Square now. There's no reason that we shouldn't have.
We do have an actual group looking at that now, so.
And they're very ready to move forward with that, so it should be something to be discussed.
On 17, I wonder, so 17, for those of you who don't have a sheet, is about the gateways, minor and major gateways, where we put up signs.
I think there's only one left, the South York Street, or Market Street coming in.
We were
It's the only one.
supposed to get something from Legacy or
Yeah, they're gonna, yes, that's a difficult situation because they're in the borough, then you go through the township, then you're back in the borough.
yeah.
Placement of that, I think, is gonna be and yes, there is part of that in the developers agreement about some kind of gateway signage on Market Street. So that's the only one I think that's left out right now. West Main is the other one, because that's private property there on the point.
Right. Remember that conversation. So is it then a priority for us?
I think it'd be good, I would think it'd be good to keep in because but it was obviously not a high priority since the South Market Street one seems to be underway.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is kind of a lofty goal out in the future. Other than that wayfinding signage, have we done any of that?
Yeah, there's a few. I think it's in the last couple of years because of the signage, PennDOT's signage requirements. I think it's kind of trickled down a little bit, but there are the parking, particularly on Strawberry Avenue, could be signed a little better from Main Street to let people know it's back there. That is actually one of the letters, we got a letter from someone that's new to the area, not in Mechanicsburg, but loved the shops downtown, but she wasn't aware that there was parking on Strawberry Avenue.
Yeah, and I know even with Parks and Rec, we were talking about pedestrian walkways, like getting to parks and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that that's been a high priority, and parking's always an issue.
That speaks to number 22, which I think should be a high priority.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we're talking about the square, I think we should be talking about parking and signage too, making sure it's easy to get lined.
Yeah, and I think I would include in that the idea of like, I know in the past there were those signs that limited the amount of time someone can be parked in the public spot as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's more of like planning thing, but thereafter it's part of it.
Did we do a tree inventory in the park?
Yes, there is a tree inventory. It needs updated, but
When the arborists came through, did they do that or?
no, when we did Arbor Day, no. It's basically the Shade Tree Commission created the one. I mean, and it's about that thick with Excel spreadsheets and maps and everything. I mean, it's very thorough. Boy Scouts did that.
A Boy Scout did that for his
Okay.
little farm.
It's a pretty good overview.
He worked with the shade tree, but he did it as an equal project.
How long ago was it done?
Some time ago, this is
Okay.
a while.
Yes, I'm sure it needs updated.
Yeah, I would say that should remain on our list. I don't know if it should be a high priority, but.
Okay.
There's also a street tree inventory that's at some point of being completed. I mean, when I left the street tree, that was something that we were working on.
And there is one in the comprehensive plan too. It's not, I don't know if it's in the plan itself, but it's part of the data that we generated.
When was the last update to the borough's the Comprehensive Parks, Recreation, and Open Space?
It was about 2 years before our comprehensive plan. And that is something that I've been trying to encourage the rec commission to undertake. Sorry, you can vouch for that. They discuss things, but it's just trying to get everything pieced together.
Unfortunately, I feel like the idea is there, but the structure has not been. We did ask Tug to come in and provide some structure, but I don't think it was quite enough. I think we need to follow up with that, maybe invite Tug back, because there's a lot of ideas. We started mapping out things that we wanted, and there's definitely a priority list. Now it's just trying to get them all back in a room and put it down on paper. So I think we're closer. We're probably about 40% closer than we were before.
I feel like that's a priority for us. I think there should be a green line and a checkbox there. Those are some of the significant assets of the borough, and there's no reason we shouldn't have a more up-to-date comprehensive rec plan.
Absolutely. And so I don't know, Roger, do you think that we can get Tug more engaged in that process, or is she stretched too thin?
With summer coming now, and not dealing with the in and out of school and everything else that they've been dealing with, I think she's going to free up a little bit more. Once summer adventure camp starts, I think she's going to have a lot more time to take care of that.
So we'll definitely, I know for that is a priority.
Yeah, let's make that our priority and put that on the update.
All right, I have an HK with that.
About explore opportunities to prevent murals.
I thought you were going to skip that one.
Which the funny part is that I've had business owners approach me about murals, and I say, contact Roger about it. So there's interest there, and I think it's creative what other towns do, but I don't know if that's our priority.
Mm-hmm.
I think that might be something if the business owners want to do something tasteful.
I remember it being something that we addressed in the past, and did we?
When we were having a lot of issues, when I was sitting on that side of the table, and we were having a ton of issues in the parks with vandalism and graffiti, and we had a tagger and a few other things. One of the things that group that I was involved with discussed was perhaps doing a white plywood wall along the railroad tracks and letting them, express themselves on there, as long as it was not vulgar or. I see Scott's already shaking his head.
She said tasteful, and I went, oh. Who said this is that?
So if you sit here at the railroad tracks, and watch the train cars go by, there's some pretty darn good artists out there.
I think my question is, if someone wanted to do that on their property, is there any legislation that does not allow that?
I would think that would fall in the boundary of harm.
Yeah.
Especially in the historic district.
Yeah. Our zoning ordinance, well, kind of not. If they're just putting up a piece of plywood on two 4x4s. The perfect example was a house up on West Cooper Street, West Keller Street, that put up this big sign in their yard about a dangerous tree in a neighbor's yard. There is not a thing we can do about that sign, because one, it's on private property, and our zoning ordinance does not speak to private property signs. The same way, when we did the sidewalk project, there was a derogatory towards council and the mayor sign put up in someone's front yard on South York Street, and we could not do a thing about it, because one, it's freedom of speech, and two, it's on private property.
So if someone wanted to paint something on a business, though, I guess that's where my head was going with the mural.
Say there was someone on East Main Street that wanted to paint the side of their building across from a fire station with a certain, would she be allowed to do that?
We have had that question come up, and the fellow has never followed through with it. Not across from, but adjacent to the Union Church and the parking lot there. He wanted to do a big mural on the side of that building, and he's never followed through with it. I think one.
But in terms of with our ordinances and legislation, would that be allowed, or is that prevented, or does it have to be approved?
I think it would be allowed, I mean, because the harp doesn't speak to color.
It doesn't speak.
I would not expect there to
If
be,
it's an
unless,
advertisement, what if they can
Yeah,
get a sign? for
That's
business
where we have to,
Versus a, like, historical mural or something.
Well, and I
That's
think
where I
the
think we
art
have to
council doing stuff versus,
Is it art or is it an advertisement?
correct, that would be a determining factor.
Yep.
So you could have a painting on the side of the building that's essentially a billboard that might be regulated under your ordinances, but if it's simple artwork, that's where you move away from regulating business, advertising and into the arena of artwork, and that's much more difficult to control. The only time I would see where a municipality might have a legitimate basis for regulating that type of activity would be if it were an historic district overlay, overlay district that would prohibit that type of exterior artwork.
and ours doesn't speak to artwork, it speaks to the actual structure
Okay.
and the historical significance of the building. That's where ours is kind of, it doesn't have the teeth that some of the other harps have.
So, to me, the 19 doesn't really apply to us, because it says explore opportunities to permit murals, and it seems like with our current legislation that we have in place, we do permit murals.
It would be something, yes, if somebody wanted to follow through and pursue it, I think that there's not a whole lot we could do to stop it unless it falls into the advertising. And that's where we gotta be careful, because the content of that is freedom of speech, this First Amendment.
You know, there's also a difference between not prohibiting something and permitting something.
Yes.
So if that's an initiative that the borough or the council would like to pursue, as some communities have, where they've promoted the development of murals, you can do that in the context of your comprehensive plan and your zoning ordinance.
Of all the items on the 15 pages we're looking at, it's not very high on my list. But we've already spent more
I
time.
hear you,
Okay.
I hear you. All right, let's move on, unless, Rebecca, did you have something?
I was just gonna add that what a lot of communities are doing is, not so specific as murals, but determining whether they have an interest in public art. And that can be sculptures or trees that are pruned a certain way, or window dressings, or sidewalk sculptures and streets and streets, that sort of thing. But I haven't seen anything that's as specific as murals.
I think art is good, so,
Public
yeah. Moving on to the next page, 23 to 30. Expand recreation opportunities through development of Mechanicsburg, Hampton Township Joint Recreation Area.
At that point in time, this is before we had our relationship with Upper Allen. I would like to suggest maybe we change that. Hampton Township kind of wants to be their own, as large as what they are. I would sooner change that to Upper Allen Township and continue on that route.
Well, how about just change it to neighboring
Surrounding,
municipalities?
okay, yep.
And I think we should make that a green.
I think so too, because even though we have that relationship now, it is a very tumultuous relationship, so we need to spend time developing and nurturing it.
It is getting better though.
Yeah,
Scott and I have really worked well together and gotten some things put through, so we're working at it. Scott's in charge over there, it's a lot easier to work with them.
good. We just want that.
Construct the Trimble Spring Greenway in cooperation with Silver Spring. Is that still relevant?
This was the one that was going to, out towards Carlisle, and trying to find some way to tie in the Carlisle route that kind of stops on the other side of Carlisle. It doesn't go, to try to find some way to tie it into the rail trail that's out on the other side of Carlisle. This one here, I think we could make this the South Mountain Trolley, and that way future councils will have this to refer to too, because they're looking at 10 to 12 years for that thing to really roll.
Right.
I think that's a good idea.
Also businesses and development, concepts that highlight opportunities for artisans and craftsmen.
This is also a flair for the planning commission members that were on the PC at the time. One of the things that they were really big on, especially out around the Pittsburgh area where EPD is from, was a lot of community craft and artisan type things. I think one of the things that we need to think is are we looking at going that route or not? You know, or are we more of a hands-on, nuts and bolts type of, you know, I think they were trying to make Mechanicsburg something it wasn't, especially because they were fostering this, at one time we had, 7 art galleries in the borough. So that's kind of where they were looking at expanding on that. Rebecca, I'll let you add into that.
Art galleries, recycling, and then came frozen yogurt.
Yes.
Does anybody see anything on this list that they want to add to, or subtract from, or highlight as a priority?
I would say number 43. We need that.
No, I mean from regional relationships,
Gotcha.
23 to 30.
So number 30, partner with West Shore Borough Regional Main Street Promotions, is that?
That was the old Main Street program, and trying to pool resources together. I don't know if there's any West Shore boroughs anymore that have a Main Street program. We were the only one.
No, the only one that was designated Main Street was Carlisle.
Yeah.
And they were in the original 1981 group, and they're looking at.
But we never got designated because there were certain criteria we had to meet or something like, we had the Main Street. The Main Street was started and they were trying to get to that point, but there were certain restrictions on the designation we couldn't meet.
Well, it was a hefty lift at that time.
I'd like to highlight number 28, because we don't do that. We should really do that. Establish periodic meetings between Mechanicsburg Area School District and Borough Council.
Okay.
I mean, I think that that's
Good.
the
We talked about that a
people.
couple of months ago, I think, too.
I know the administration, this is another one that Scott and I and the Greg Longwell and Mark Lighty have got together. We're doing quarterly meetings to see where we stand, any issues that are coming up as far as what's going on between rec and a few of the other things, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. And it helps, you know, discussing what the school district's seeing from their point of view and what we're seeing. So we started at least on the administrative level.
And then I also want to go back up to 27, where the lifelong learning education program, so that would be the REP program that we're working with currently. Yeah, I think that should remain a priority to keep that going out too, which I think ties into that.
Okay.
Let's go on to impacts on policies and ordinances.
Number 40.
There you go.
Should be great. I think, well, maybe you, or even kind of, I feel like we have a nice list from Roger as just making, like, taking action on those road maintenance ideas.
How's that not great?
Yeah, it's 12 years ago, John.
Yeah. No, I mean, why isn't it a priority? Why isn't it listed as a priority now? Like, what was my question?
It doesn't have the 2 check marks, so there's still a lot of room for improvement there. And I think and I agree that's one I have that should have been in HP from the start. I think that's where, and this also ties in with the authority and their capital improvement plan and figuring out where we're going to go forward from there. As a matter of fact, there's a joint project that I'm talking to Silver Springs about tomorrow morning. Church Road is going to raise its ugly head again. So I've already had Greg looking at a few things for that as far as stormwater goes, just to see where we stand and start looking at easements. And then that full depth restoration we spoke about to try to get the cost down. Upper Island and Silver Springs used it limited over there. with some success. They've never tried it in an area where there's high water, but that's where we're gonna look at maybe possibly doing that out there to solidify Church Road a little bit.
Do we need to do any, does HARB have formalized procedures?
HARB has formalized procedures. Whether they stick to them is a question. But yeah, they have formalized procedures.
So we don't need to do number 32 anymore, from the authority's perspective?
Which one?
32, evaluate and permit additional stormwater management techniques such as.
Yeah,
That's gonna use.
You still, so the borough still has a stormwater management, ordinance.
Yeah.
So that's something that you want to keep in your comprehensive plan, and the council delegates that authority or a part of the responsibility for implementing the stormwater management ordinance to the authority, but you still want to maintain control and oversight of that. So I would not, I would suggest not eliminating that from your comprehensive plan.
Check the box, we can agree.
31 has no check marks. Expand rental property ordinance to address other property types and develop an overall maintenance enhancement strategy.
This has been an ongoing discussion ever since this was put in the original comprehensive plan. The rental inspection that we have right now is pretty robust. There is a massive amount of rental properties that get inspected every 3 years. I think they're averaging 500 to 600 units a year that's doing the inspections on them. Legacy Park is adding to that number because there's people buying a block of 4 townhomes and renting them all out. So the discussion on this was perhaps a pre-sale inspection, where if you put your house up for sale, you would call the borough, they would go in and they would make sure that everything in there was up to code as far as what is there. One of the problems that we get is the same argument we hear, you're just looking for a reason to get in our house, stuff like that. But we could do a sidewalk check or a few other things like that to make sure the sidewalk meets code, and then before the house is sold or some kind of agreement with the buyer.
To me, there are 2 big problems with that. One, it involves a lot of staff time.
Exactly.
2, they're gonna get a big pushback from the realtor community, and it's gonna make it a lot harder and more complicated to sell your
Yes, and that's why this has been an ongoing discussion for quite a while, is how do we expand on the rental inspections. And it's a difficult situation. Both of those points are very valid. Plus, you have the homeowner, why do I want to, I have to disclose this stuff to a realtor, why are you coming in and making me fix this stuff before we sell the house? So there's a couple of complications to expanding that.
Do you think, you said that the rental inspection is pretty robust to begin with, but do you think there's anything that should be on our radar from the comprehensive planning standpoint that would, we gotta make sure our residents are protected from,
Yep. Well, and I think that's part of my idea when we put the quality of life ordinance in place was to hit this on not just when the house sells, but on a daily basis. When Matt's not out doing rental inspections, he's driving around town, he's looking for this stuff. It's grass growing season, we're gonna start issuing quality of life tickets for high grass and weed, which he's already started doing that. There's other ones that, in the property maintenance realm, there's other things also as far as trash and debris, not taking care of a swimming pool and stuff like that we're hitting there. 90% of it is outside the house. It's not, because unless we have a reason to go in the house, we're not gonna go into the person's residence and say you don't have any smoke detectors in your bedrooms. I think that's crossing the line a little bit there. Where the rental inspection allows us to do that when we go into a rental inspection, because they need to meet a certain safety parameter. So the QLL, I think, takes care of a lot of.
Yeah, personally, I would say we could take that off of the list.
Okay.
Because there are a number of other items that we have that already addressed, like quality of life.
Yeah. I think number 33 is listed as a high priority because that's gonna take place in the zoning ordinance. And there are some suggestions in there that Carolyn and EPD made, when you get in the back pages of this.
Develop a process to codify the form of downtown development and remove the ambiguity and conflicts of the heart. Do we need
I think so.
that in there?
I think so. I think and Joe, you can speak to some of this too, if you've been to some of the hard meetings and seen, I think there's some confusion on their priorities. And it leads to confusion on the residents' part, because they start down a trail. I mean, the main key on the hard ordinance is that they need to address the application on its historical merit. And they get down a rabbit trail of colors and materials and things that, they would use on their house, but the resident may not necessarily want to do that. And I have actually had residents come in, do I have to take this to the harp? Yes, then I'm not doing it. Forget it. My house will sit like the way it is, in the harp district. So there are, because the harp has kind of a reputation of that, I think it goes along with one of the other ones there that they need to have this is the hard procedure, this is what they need to look at, and that's where it ends, and it's an up and down vote. I've seen them deny permits because the person didn't show up, and our ordinance doesn't require them to be here. It suggests they be here. So I think we need some guidelines for them to operate under.
I would agree with that, especially from the standpoint of period correctness on the outside doesn't necessarily mean that you should have to not benefit from the current technology in regards to insulation and stuff like that. So I think that's something that comes up quite regularly.
Yes.
So I think it would be good for an expanded clarification.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
So is that something we want to highlight or something we haven't done that we should be doing?
I actually think the one on the other page that where did we speak about that before? Or was it down here? Oh, formalized, I think number 40 and perhaps number 35 could be combined.
Yeah, that sounds. They sound okay. And how about number 41? For the suitability of offering tax breaks for costs of property improvements in the historic district or enhancement maintenance areas. Is that something that council wants to see remain on the prior list?
I think to make this worthwhile, we have to get the school district on board.
Yeah, because our taxes are
not
a small portion of their total.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that we can really, that'd be a very complicated.
Of all the things we have to work on, I'm not sure that's a priority.
Do we want to?
There are other things we can do to work with Eric.
Yeah.
I'm sure that would be more beneficial.
Been working hard for many years to provide that kind of stuff.
So we want to remove that, take 41 off completely?
Let's remove that.
Okay.
Does anybody have any more comments on 31 to 43, impacts of policies and ordinances, or anything else to add to that list?
Along with 43, I know we talked about the importance of improving our infrastructure and road maintenance, tree initiatives, et cetera. But is there any way to incorporate the communication of that? Because I feel like when I talk to residents, a big thing is making, sometimes they're just not informed about the processes in regards to we're not gonna rip up a street, pave it, and then have to rip it up again to do underground work, So I don't know if there's a way we can add in like communicating about that or something like that?
When they call in and they ask, that's what we're telling them, that we're working on getting a plan established between the authority and the borough council to try to do a comprehensive plan. And that was part of what Greg and I had a meeting about, probably about 3 weeks ago, was to discuss that in particular, especially with the data, the survey stuff that he has available to him now. And I think that's something that we use this year to plan for and go forward, because we know UTI is going to be coming into the Orchard Crest Heritage Acres soon, right up Allendale Road, and then they're going to branch off all the streets from there. And they're going to go from Allendale, the curves, to Simpson Street. And everybody out there is going to have gas available to them now. So it's kind of one of those things that, we need to also consider the outside utilities and what they're going to be doing too, and pull that into it. Now, most of theirs is going to be in the sidewalks, under the sidewalks. The laterals and stuff are going to be under the sidewalks. The only road they're actually going to really dig up is going to be Allendale Road.
What's that happen?
It was supposed to be this year, but that COVID messed them up. I don't know what they got a grant for that or some kind of foundation funding to do that.
I have a question, and I'm not sure where it would fall, but if we're talking about communication and signs, all of the street sweeping signs, is that something that should be included of the removal of, because we're not following it, we have unnecessary signs?
That is something that I need to discuss with the authority and figure out how we want to plan that.
It would be nice to reduce our sign pollution.
It would, definitely. If there was a way to do temporary signs and make them enforceable, I think that would go a long way.
The authority does also have to, well, at this particular time, we are doing street sweeping.
Yeah. And I think that's something that we need to, I think council and the authority will have that conversation coming up here probably the next couple of months to figure out how they want to proceed with that.
Just for an FYI, the authority is going to be evaluating, because our credit period is ending.
End of June.
End of June. We're going to be evaluating our credit and what we got towards the credit for street sweeping. And, whether it was, the opportunity, the cost for the credit was worth it. And because there are two sides to street sweeping. There's the aesthetic purpose, and then there's the stormwater purpose. And the authority is focused on the stormwater purpose, and the borough is more of the aesthetic purpose. So we're going to have to hammer out those details and figure out, or just evaluate the program over the past year. So that's where the authorities are. So I'm sure you'll hear something about it in the future.
Back to what I was saying though, all the feedback I got, once I explained, it was very that makes sense. So that's why I kind of brought that up.
Okay, moving on, comprehensive plan status.
I'm not sure why we wouldn't have all of the three of these things with green lines and check marks, that we would continue to do them.
I think we should make it a priority to do them annually. Yeah.
That should come out of the community outreach for a lot of it.
Or.
I agree, because this is more or less our goal setting, so we need to make sure we keep ourselves accountable.
Yeah, we really tried to do that in the past 2 years with our goal setting.
Yes.
But matching that up with the comprehensive plan should really be a priority for us. Yeah. It would be interesting to compare then the goal setting that we did last year, 2 years with, and the discussions we've had on all of our committee meetings already with all of these items that we're talking about tonight, because I can tell you a lot of them overlap.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, I think you're right. So a lot of them align, not just overlap, but align with exactly what we're talking about here and what EPD is looking for going forward. So a lot of your goals could be added into this also to make them priorities for going forward with the EPD and the review of the comprehensive comprehensive plan.
So on that list, is there anything that we should add, or we're gonna keep them, we're gonna move them to priority status?
Yep.
Yeah. Alright. Let's move on to their comments regarding, potential focus areas for the future. Did anybody have any comments on what they've defined as focus areas for the future? Being mobility and connectivity. Are there any additions to what you want to see as priority? I think I would like to see, I don't know about anybody else, but I think I would like to see perhaps some more wording on the planning aspect of our infrastructure and working with the authority on the comprehensive
Capital improvement.
And having that be continually reviewed.
I agree with that, especially considering all those mobility and connectivity issues they're all related, so.
Any comments?
Geospatial technology.
GIS. What we have for, like right now, for the authorities using ERSI is what their Earthspace, or I forget what ERSI actually stands for, but it's the GIS where you have the map, the aerial map, you click on what, in the authority's case, the impervious surface for properties, and it tells you the square footage and stuff.
Gotcha.
That was one of the things that we talked about at one of the meetings with Carolyn was a virtual comprehensive plan that is, one, it's easier to update. It lets the residents know where we're planning on, how we're going through and what we're going to look to do, and gives them they can get online and find out where it is. In using geospatial helps a lot for our tracking purposes also.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it sounds like it eliminates barriers with attending in person especially.
Yes.
Okay, moving on. Let's have our discussion on the zoning ordinance items. I don't think we have to get too far into them because we're going to refer the bulk of it to the planning commission. Yep. But in terms of, I think some of the bigger items were some of the suggestions in terms of ordinance changes, like on farm, the animals, and so it's like the livestock sample ordinance that she.
Yeah, right now our zoning ordinance addresses livestock under accessory structures and the keeping of livestock or undomesticated animals under 200 pounds.
Yeah, we have farmettes in the borough.
And actually that farmette that we're talking about back on Portland Street, those are our emotional support sheep that are allowed to fly on airplanes also. They each have ID cards and TSA approval on those cards. I've seen them. I don't know about the bees though, but he keeps in his yard. That's where we run into the issue with this. Everything now nowadays is an emotional support animal in one form or another, and you can get a doctor to sign just about anything.
I'm not sure how much we want to regulate it and, put the burden on the zoning officer to enforce.
Most of the situation we run into is the difference between a rooster and a chicken, and a rooster and a hen. If you're allowed chickens, why are you allowed roosters? And, so it's a noise thing. The sheep, I've had 1 or 2 calls on, and that was it. The alligator on Sherwood Court is a totally different situation. We get calls every spring when they let it out of the basement.
I don't wanna make it more complicated than it needs to be, so I
think we've got it covered pretty
I think we have it covered now, so I don't think we need to explore additional regulation on that.
I think the loosening up of the parking requirements is something that's needed to be addressed.
Yes.
And I think that's a big help. I think the definitions that on the first page are absolutely required because of changing times and stuff like that.
Yeah, and do we need to get into, wireless communication again? Didn't we explore that?
We did. The problem that we run into with that is the FCC changes the goalposts on us quicker than what we can adapt. Right now, we're getting them with a zoning permit, a building permit, if they're going in the right of way. As a matter of fact, there's one back on, York Circle that's gonna be put in. They're actually taking out a 30-foot pole, putting in a 50-foot pole. So we've got them for the street cut ordinance, the zoning permit, and the building permit for all the fastening. So we're regulating where these things are going. And a lot of times, some places are, somebody has a pole on their property, and they want one of these put in there. They come in and they get the zoning permit for the small cell tower. So, we're catching what's coming through and letting FCC basically take the regulation side of it.
Okay. So do you see the recommendation as something we need to consider?
It would be nice to have in there, but I think it can be a standalone chapter in the zoning ordinance. And I think this is where maybe Greg and I and some people from the county look at this.
So we'll send that one to the planning commission for the review, and then, not the animal.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm okay with everything else. Does anybody else have any comments on the other zoning issues we're going to forward to the planning commission? That's really what makes this such a long document.
Yes. And that's a tool you have to implement your comprehensive plan.
Yes.
And that's why that becomes a 2-for-1 on that.
Any other comments?
Nope, thank you.
No? All right, let's move on to the rest of our committee workshop for tonight, and we'll have the approval of the committee minutes from May 4th, 2021.
So moved.
A motion from Mr. Anthony, is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Agerton seconds. Unless we have a negative response, we will record the vote as unanimous. Municipal and community outreach, Ms. Agerton.
We did not have a meeting in May. We have one scheduled for June 15th at 6:30. We will be reviewing guardianship services, for consideration for some of our outreach.
Okay. I have nothing further on community and economic development. We had a pretty lengthy discussion on the comprehensive plan, so we will move on to finance administration ordinance. Mr. Anthony.
I have no report.
Personnel committee, Mr. Whitcomb is not here. Ms. Agerton, do you have anything?
We are going to be having our next personnel committee meeting to follow up on goal setting and with our borough manager. So, establishing dates, which will be in the next 2 weeks.
Awesome, thank you. Property, parks, and recreation, Ms. Agerton.
I have have nothing to report at this time.
Public Works and Safety, Mr. Palmer.
We did not meet, but, there was some progress made toward our goal, and I'll let Councilman Bucher explain quickly what progress was made.
Yeah, so this week I was able to cut some of the videos for, our bicycle safety tips, Borough bike tips, and, looking at getting them edited in the next week or so to get them all put together and share them prior to sharing with the public, just to make sure that they look all right. But so watch out for those coming soon.
Great work.
And thank you for, the chief and the rest of the police department, for their support on the project.
Anything else?
I don't know if you have anything to add, Roger, and
Public Works and Safety, the guys have been working with me at the swimming pool. We worked through last week, we're continuing to work on things this week, and, we're gonna be open this weekend, at least with one pool. I've got the pump flooded on the Olympic pool, so we're gonna have to pull the motor, have it baked, and make sure it works out before, so at least the big pool will be open, should be open and ready to go.
the weather had been nice with the pool been open last week.
Okay. No, that was the technical issue we had, so it was kind of thankful.
Fortunate that we.
Thankful it was only 54 degrees on Saturday, yes.
So everyone, make sure you wear your wetsuit and your scarves this weekend to celebrate.
Yeah, because our heater didn't come in for the pool water, so it's gonna be very cold.
Was it just a matter of like age to our equipment, or is that something we need to kind of plan for in the future, or
It's,
something that we can?
actually, it's a matter, I mean, the stuff runs for 3 months out of the year and then it sits. The guys were bumping the stuff. The filter pit on the Olympic pool sprung a leak and it was going over into the other one. When I left Friday, at noon, I went up through the pool, the water was holding. When we come in this morning, there was 8 inches gone and it filled up where it's not supposed to be water in it, and the sump pump was not running to pump it out of there, so, we ended up, I had to call Heim and I'm gonna have them come in and pull the motor for the pump itself, and that is the main pump for the Olympic pool.
Do you think we'll be ready?
We'll be ready.
All right. Anything else?
Nothing.
All right, we will conclude the committee workshop section. With that, we'll have, pledge allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
President Weber, Vice President Miller,
Here.
Councilwoman Atherton,
Present.
Councilman Anthony,
Present.
Booker,
Here.
Kalman,
Here.
Whitman, Mayor Ritter,
Here.
Solicitor Pasty,
Present.
Engineer Rogowski,
Here.
Chief Myers,
Here.
Chief Now,
Here.
EMC Warden,
Here.
Manager Patricia.
Here.
Thank you. Do we have any guests this evening?
Not that I'm aware of, sir.
At this time, we'll open the floor to citizens' comments, and if you just give your name and address and step up to the podium, you can make a comment. I don't see anyone taking the offer, so we will continue with correspondence.
I have no correspondence, sir.
Okay. moving on to approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the May 19th, 2021 council meeting?
So moved.
Mr. Anthony moves. Is there a second?
Okay.
Ms. Agerton seconds. Unless I hear a negative response, we will record the vote as unanimous.
You want to abstain because I wasn't here at the previous meeting.
Mr. Booker abstains. Is there any other objection or negative response? Hearing none, it is, the minutes are approved. Engineers report.
Mr. Chairman, quickly, the pool is blue, check. There's water in there, working on that. Item number 2, Legacy Park. Next phase is well under construction, if the council is aware of that, so we'll continue to, move dirt around, put storm sewer in, all of those types of things, and anticipate that, we'll be very anxious to open that up, given the housing market and some other external factors going on these days, so that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Rodowski. Community liaison reports. Downtown Partnership, Ms. Agerton.
The Downtown Partnership continues to meet via Zoom, and is full planning ahead with Community Day in conjunction with the rec board. I know that they are really reevaluating events that they're doing over the summer and the fall to meet the mandate. So there will be hopefully a report of new events coming up next time. That is all I have this evening.
Thank you. Moving on to library, sorry.
Yeah, like most of society, and with the rules changing with protection from COVID, the library is doing the same. They're still requiring face masks unless you're fully vaccinated, but they're now having a lot of their children and teen programs in-house again, and with the adult, they're moving some of their programs back into the building again, and the best bet is to check the calendar to see which events are still held by Zoom or remotely, or which ones are in the building again. The big fundraiser, the Friends of the Simpson Library are having their combination Ashcombs and TJ Rockwell fundraisers. Ashcombs and TJ Rockwell's will be offering a percentage of the proceeds they make that day to the library. And this is Wednesday, June 2nd, in Ashcomb's 9 to 7. 20% of the money you spend on products there at Ashcomb's go to the Friends of Mechanicsburg Library, but you must have a Shop for a Cause flyer with you to participate in that. And then, of course, they're hoping that if you're shopping for your garden needs at Ashcomb's, that you'll go to Rockwell's and eat there. And that's from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. and 15% of the cost of your meal will go to Friends of the Mechanicsburg Library. But you must have one of the flyers that typically all these eat-out events require, and you can get them either online or at the library. The library's 2021 Summer Learning Program kicks off June 5th. It runs till July 31st, and all ages can register. The goal is to read as much as you can and track your reading and possibly win prizes, and they have prizes for all age groups. And just to solidify their idea of bringing things back into the library again in person, or to celebrate, they're having a fiddle trio from Boston, and on June 3rd at 7 p.m. So that's their first musical event that they've had back in person at the library. You must register online to see them. I don't know if I can pronounce the name. It's Lamprede or something similar to that. It's again a three-person fiddle trio from Boston, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Kalman. Do we have anything for the Museum Association from Mr. Weber?
Not at this time, no.
Okay, thank you. Downtown Program Service Manager, Ms. Yap.
It is so nice to see you all. I have something related to the Mechanicsburg Museum Association, and that is You're aware that a number of years ago, we received a grant from the Mechanicsburg Area Community Foundation to secure an easement for what I refer to as the tavern patch, the land that the Frankenberger Tavern actually sits on. And that seemed pretty straightforward until we learned that we had to contact all of the 9 original investors in that project that goes back 40 years or so, when the office building, 2-story office building was constructed. And last week we were able to do that. We were able to get every one of them. 2 of them no longer walk the earth. So we'll be signing that easement here in the next few weeks. That is very, very good news. And what that means is that Frankenberger Tavern, the Museum Association was always very concerned about this, will be there for another 201 years. My report, you have a copy of my report. I want to thank the Borough for putting the downtown pole banners up. They look great. Under About Face, the property at the corner of Walnut and Main, East Main, that keeps getting hit by the trucks, our About Face review panel considered an application from them last week and approved 2 different grants, one for the storefront and one for the building. That project will be before the Harb next Monday evening. We're going to take the wraparound overhang off and do a lot of other work. All told, a $15,000 project or so. They declined the Cumberland Street View grant, which is a larger grant, simply to advance the project more quickly and maybe be able to hand it off to one of their preferred contractors. The other application that we reviewed was from Brittle Bark. We approved part of it. We declined to approve a window film that would filter light and reduce the heat inside the building. And we did that because it would change the look of the building from the outside, and you really wouldn't be able to see in. It would filter all the 30% of the sunlight going in there. It would make those windows very, very dark. So we're working with Diane Krulak, the owner, to come up with some other alternatives for that space, which she has already leased, and she's been on that side of the street before. Under business and property updates, Kanagawa Japanese Restaurant opens July 7th. The property that houses Nybert's Barber Shop and Record Smith is for sale, as is the building on East Main Street that houses Apicella Lori Orthodontics. So that's pretty significant. And you'll recall in my earlier reports I've been talking about working with a developer to identify prospective redevelopment projects that were probably included housing and commercial use, were in downtown or a town center, that had parking off-site. We identified 5 projects in Mechanicsburg Borough that fit that criteria, and a couple of them are advancing. That's just internal, so that doesn't really mean a whole lot at this point, but again, it's good to know. We'll be announcing our community development block grant program in the next couple months. I want you to be thinking about a project that you might want to submit for funding that would land in the August to September 22 timeframe. You can use it for a lot of different things. You've had a couple applications. One was approved that was for some crosswalks near American House on North Market Street. That didn't happen, so we redirected those funds to 203 East Main Street to acquire and raise the really crummy building next to Frankenberger Tower. We know what happened there. Good thing. That's what I have. Anything for me? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any additions to the agenda?
I have no additions to the agenda, sir.
Thank you. Do we have a motion for the approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Mr. Anthony moves.
Second.
Mr. Coleman seconds. Unless there are any response, Secretary will record the vote as unanimous. And the agenda is approved. Mr. Sosowski, I'll turn it over to you.
Action items before Borough Council for June 1st, 2021. Discussion of possible action on the conditional use application of Jason Smith for office small-scale use at 308 East Main Street, Mechanicsburg. So moved.
Mr. Pastor is going to say, do you have a recommended motion?
If I may, thank you, Mr. Miller. If council is inclined to move forward with granting the conditional use application and approving it, I recommend that, that a motion be made to, adopt, the, April 25th, 2021, memorandum, from Mr. Rogowski, providing recommendations with respect to the conditions. Number one being, item A1, to limit the number of employees at the location to no more than 13, and then accepting conditions set forth in items A2 through 5 in his memorandum, which we discussed during the hearing.
Thank you.
I'd like to move that, please.
Mr. Anthony moves, is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Agerton seconds. Unless I hear a negative response, we will record the vote as unanimous. And the motion passes.
Discussion of possible action on resolution 04-2021 regarding the Cumberland County's proposed sale of Claremont Manor.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Agerton seconds. Discussion.
So I guess I'll just kick off a question or two. I read the memo that came in, from Mr. Wardle, and I couldn't tell from it, the information, I guess I would ask, could you expand at all on your thoughts on this particular situation? It looks like, I'm a mortgage guy, I don't understand what's happening over there. Is it something that we should do? What are your thoughts on it?
So from a Department of Health perspective, looking at the facility as it's owned now, and looking at the facility that is currently owned by Alaire, which is the company that is the bidder that they are working with, there are not a lot of differences as far as Medicare rating, as far as the number of inspections and the number of issues that have been found at both facilities. They're very much in the same realm. What this largely comes down to, I think, is not necessarily looking at the proposed buyer, but looking at what has happened to county-owned facilities once they are sold by counties. Every county that had a county-owned home surrounding Cumberland County sold their home within the last 20 years, as listed in there. I think Perry may have been the only one that didn't have a county-owned home within the last 20 years that sold it. We, from a Department of Health perspective, we've seen significant issues with homes within the last 20 years that were sold that were previously county homes. Brighton being the top of that list, but there have been issues where there's been provisional license issued, I believe, against Pleasant Acres in York County, which used to be a county-owned home up until sometime in the 2010s. I believe that there has been, I don't know if it rises to the level of a provisional license, but I know that there's been complaints against Cedar Haven, which used to be the Lebanon County home. And so I think that the residents of Cumberland County are largely looking for the county to really do its due diligence as to whether selling the home is best for the residents that are there, not necessarily whether it's just best for the county's bottom line. I think that's what is at the heart of the matter. I know that there may be some concerns regarding the proposed buyer that the county's working with. I think, knowing what I know in the nursing home space, I have significantly less concerns with this buyer than many of the other ones. I mean, this is the company that the Department of Health brought in to be the temporary manager at Brighton Rehab in Beaver County because, I mean, we put a contract out knowing that we needed somebody to go in there and run it well because, I mean, you can do a Google and you'll see the federal investigation, state investigation, everything that's taking place there. So this company is one that the Department of Health has vetted. Now, of course, anytime that a facility changes hands, whether it's hospital, nursing home, there is a process that has to go through the Department of Health. But I would imagine that this company, being one that the Department of Health has worked with within the last year, would have fewer issues than some of the other ones. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Do we have any other questions?
So why do we suppose all these other local municipalities, their councils have chosen to, write letters, supporting the not selling it?
I'll speak to that because, just coming from the background where I'm at, I think that many citizens, are unaware of the sale. I think it happened, although it was out in the open. I think that when they heard that it was happening, there's some concerns about their loved ones being able to be placed through Medicaid and being able to have a, facility that is good and being able to help someone that may have run out of funds. So I think, when I think about this, I agree that this is probably the least worst buyer that you can get to come in, but it just, for the county commissioners, just to consider and to slow step in and consider all of that, like how the transition will work if they continue to go forward. I do believe from what I've discussed that they plan on going forward with it, but just making sure that the citizens and the employees there are taken care of during the transition, I think is the most important part. There is, I think, a percentage of people that thought that the county home was the only one that would be able to take people on a fixed or low income. And really that's not true. All nursing homes, with the exception of what they would call CCRCs, which are private facilities, like you would see Messiah or Bethany being a CCRC with multiple levels that you buy into. Manor Care's Gardens of the Shores and all of those things, they all accept both Medicaid and private funds. So I think it's just making sure that when you go in, you hear the stories all of the time of the nursing homes. They're never good. There's a lot of good stuff that happens in our nursing homes. But I think with COVID mixed into it, there's just a lot of trepidation about having a private buyer come in and not have the county oversight. Because it's nice to have the county commissioners there checking on them and making sure that they're doing right. Nate, does that sound about right? Like what the feedback you're getting from people?
Largely, I haven't heard quite as much as far as the reasoning for the push. I've seen some things on social media, but that's really the first I'm hearing as far as the reasoning for it.
And I think that's why other councils have gone and just said, let's be responsible and make sure that we keep all that information out in the open and have a good transition plan if that's where they're going.
Thank you.
This resolution specifically says that the Mechanicsburg Borough Council urged Cumberland County Board of Commissioners to explore all options available that might allow the operation of Claremont to stay within the county structure, or will, at the very least, allow the county to remain oversight and control over the quality of care. So just want you to be aware of what the resolution says.
There's also a misprint on the resolution as to what, above, narrator's name.
Carlisle,
Yeah,
Borough, yeah, I saw that.
Wrong Borough.
Yeah, both pages, those are the same.
Yeah.
The sample resolution provided was the resolution adopted by Carlisle Borough with one change as requested from EMC Ward. So it can be changed or modified if council wants to change it. We used it as a template to provide something.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments?
The one here for signatures does not have the Borough Carlisle on it.
Right. If there are no other comments from members of council, unless I hear a negative response, we'll record the vote as unanimous. The chair is going to vote now. go on to the next one, Mr. Justice.
Discussion and possible action to authorize the borough solicitor to prepare documents for transfer of assets from the borough to the municipal authority.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Anthony and a second from Mr. Tom.
Other way around.
Other way around, sorry, that's the way it was going, so this is, thought that's what I heard, so it's first. Motion is from Mr. Tomlin, the second is from Mr. Anthony. Do we have any discussion? And this is just to authorize the borough solicitor to prepare the documents for the transfer, it's not necessarily to authorize the transfer.
That's correct, they would necessarily come back to council for approval of those documents.
This was a request of the auditors, if I read it correctly.
The authority's auditors, correct.
And the borough's auditors.
And the borough's auditors.
The borough's auditors provided the list of assets that they were no longer gonna depreciate on behalf of the borough. The authority auditor reviewed the list and then asked that we make the changes required for the ownership of those assets.
Do we have a, we have a motion on the table, unless I hear a negative response, we'll record the vote as unanimous. Motion passes.
Discussion and possible action to approve the 60-day extension for recording of the Mechanicsburg Area School District Land Development, High School Land Development Plan. That was attachment 4.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Mr. Pelham makes the motion, Mr. Bucher seconds. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, unless I hear a negative response, we will record the vote as unanimous. The motion passes, and next item.
Discussion and action on expenditures from all funds for the period beginning May 1st, 2021 through May 31st, 2021, as listed below.
We have a motion.
So moved.
Mr. Anthony moves. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Anderson seconds. Unless you hear a negative response, we will record the vote as unanimous. Motion passes. Do we have any citizens' comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to any other business. Start round the room.
No, thank you.
I will now be the inspector for the slides at the pool. I passed my test.
Congratulations.
With everything else going on, I don't know how, but I passed it, paid attention in class, and got my inspector's license for the amusement ride at the park, or at the pool. We'll be doing that soon. That's all I have.
Nothing.
I'd like to publicly express my condolences to our Vice President, Councilman Miller, for his father passing away.
Thank you, Mr. Tom. Thank you.
I'd like to express the same condolences as well. And I'd also would like to recognize Officer Paulus and Sergeant Lozera for their help in the bicycle safety inspection.
All right, I just wanted to let everyone know that the South Mountain Trolley Partnership started up with their Friends of the Greenway last weekend. So it was a nice event. Mechanicsburg was recognized as being the lead for helping them hopefully get that in our future. I also wanted to say thank you to Councilman Tomlin for helping organize the Memorial Day event on Monday. It was a very nice event. And the cemetery was beautiful as usual. Thank you.
It's nice to see everyone face to face.
Nothing further.
I have 2 things. Mechanicsburg Fire Department is one of the participating agencies for the county-wide, and it's a regional asset for technical rescue. We hold the cache of equipment for trench rescue. And this Sunday, June 6th, there'll be multiple disciplines, we're gonna be going over, practical training and certification at Legacy out at the park, so they're gonna dig a couple ditches, pretty deep, and so you'll see resources there from as far away as Shippensburg, East Bensboro, or Southampton, and the county units as well, so all day Sunday, way back in the back of the field, if anybody questions it. So, the other thing is, I just was notified earlier, just a couple hours ago, that the television show that I participated in with the State Fire Commissioner, they released the rights, it was for the inside Pennsylvania boroughs, it turned out pretty good, it had a first airing on Sunday morning, I guess, Saturday morning. And, so what I'll do is I'll go ahead and push that out, so everybody from council and whoever else, so they released it. So I'll do that later on this evening, if you get a link from them.
Are you signing autographs later?
Maybe. But, so it's a half-hour show, and it really does showcase Mechanicsburg, mainly, primarily, and also, some other things that the state's interested in, so. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
All right, meeting adjourned.